We're live and joined by a very special guest, guys. Let me make sure I can see your comments in the side. We are live on both Facebook and YouTube again for the second week in a row. Welcoming our new YouTube family. And I'm just getting set up. We're going to get some music going here, I do believe, while we get set up here where we can see your comments. If you can see us, guys, just give us a thumbs up, say hello, and we'll just give a few minutes for you all to join. Today, we are going to be talking about boards, how to form your nonprofit board. Should family be on the board? How to find good family, or not good family, but how to find good board members. What is a board? What roles do a board play in a nonprofit? That's what we're going to be diving into today, guys. And since we're talking about family on the board and whether or not we think it's a good idea, we're joined by some family. I'm Tracy.
I'm Robert.
And we are both nonprofit coaches and legal aids. We help you to structure your nonprofit, fund your nonprofit, and create a solid plan. We also help with compliancy as well. And this is our second live here on YouTube. So we're going to get started momentarily. We see we have a couple of people watching. Please say hello so we can say hello to you. Oh, I think I see it. Here we go. Hello. Hello, Cliche. I hope I'm saying that correct. Good morning. Awesome. Ready to learn. And we're ready to teach, guys. And we're going to take that music down momentarily. But right now, we're just going to give a few minutes to join, guys. We got a couple of more people in the room. Awesome. 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 And I have the mouse right here, guys. So that's why you see me moving around. So I'm just making sure we have it all set up. And it looks like we are ready to go. So like I said, guys, we're going to be talking about working with family. Now, we can go ahead and get started. So we're going to go ahead and turn that down, but we're going to talk about working with family. I actually have a lot of my family. Everybody in this room is my family right now. And so I work with family. There are definitely some pros and cons to working with family. And sometimes it's a good thing. Sometimes it's a bad thing. But today we're going to talk about the pros and cons and talk a little bit about the structure of a board in general. So what do you think, first off, before we get into the structure of the board? Do you think working with family is a good idea? Do you have a solid answer on it, or is it more
so gray? Far so good? I mean, I can't say it's been bad. I can't say it's been the greatest. I mean, it's been pretty good. We've had pretty good results from it. So,
because is this your first time working with family?
It is. It is. I mean, I've seen it as a kid. You know, I've seen my family, work together and grow businesses like that. But some went good and some didn't. So now, as I'm seeing it from my viewpoint. It's a different story.
Would you say, like, prior to us working together, you would have ever thought that you would work with family? Or I
mean, I think it's probably a dream for people to really, start a family business, the word family business. So I don't know if I've necessarily saw myself working, with the family, but, as far as growing, with my son and wanting to have him develop, that might be a different angle of it, but yeah, it's different.
And we're going to dive into all of the pros and cons, guys. We've been talking about all of the pros and cons of working with family. Again, as you're joining, if you could just say hello, guys, then we'll know that you're here, so that way we can just see the different people that are watching. And again, guys, hello from YouTube and Facebook, because we're streaming from both of those right now. So before we dig into whether or not you should have family on your board, I want to talk about a board a little bit, because sometimes a lot of you guys are new to nonprofits, and you may not even, you may not have a good idea as to what a board is or what a board does. So I'm going to talk about 8 of the most complex, and I'm just going to, not complex, but 8 of the most pivotal. There we go. 8 of the most pivotal roles when it comes to a nonprofit. However, most of our nonprofits start with 3 to 5 board members, so they don't have 8 individuals in these roles. So you may serve multiple hats, but just for you, so you have an idea of what a board is. A board is the governance of the nonprofit. The main difference between a nonprofit and a business is that a nonprofit is set up for a mission. It's mission-based, it's community-based, and community-driven. And of course, a for-profit, it's about profit only. And so that doesn't mean that you can't generate revenue or you don't generate revenue. It just simply means that nonprofits are for the betterment of a certain mission or certain area of the community. So with that being said, nonprofits are not ran by an individual. We have a lot of people. I take it back. There are certain nonprofits that you can set up where it's run by an individual, but in my personal opinion, the most flourishing nonprofits and the ones that are really built to connect to the community, they are ran by a board, and there's reasons for that. The main reason is for accountability, so that everything is focused on the mission and there's no conflict of interest. This is the board is basically who runs the nonprofit and who kind of decides how things go. So that's the governance of your nonprofit. So there's 8 different parts: president/chairman, secretary, treasurer, and vice president. So I would say president, vice president, or chairman, vice chairman, secretary, and treasurer. Those are the top 4 right there. That really 3 is a bare minimum requirement for the IRS and for most states, but I would say those are the top 4 that you need, because you always want to have a support for the president. So the vice president is basically there to, just as it is kind of politically, the vice president is there to really understand that role. So if they ever have to step in, they'll be able to step in, because we're all people, we're human, so things happen. And that's the cool thing about a nonprofit. Is it's being run by a board. So if something happens, if you have to take some time off, someone in the family gets sick or something of that nature, the nonprofit keeps going, even if you're off or if you're not off. So those are the top 4. Second 4 would be someone for marketing and or a social butterfly. So someone who likes to, I would kind of consider you a social butterfly more so.
I can be a social butterfly.
Yes, you would be a social butterfly when it comes to the world. Like when it comes to non-virtual, you're definitely super social butterfly and virtual. And virtual. Those are just the people that like to shake hands, like to connect. He has a whole lot of people that he still has connections with from different points of his life and things like that, and still have a tight, close-knit relationship with, which that seems like work to me. I have a very small inner circle, but when it comes to virtually connecting, I like to connect virtually because I can connect with more people at one time, because it can be a bit draining for me. So you want to have both on your board. You want to have someone who's good with and they feel fulfilled in. I think that's the definition of a introvert versus a extrovert. Is an extrovert is actually getting fulfilled when they're out and they're talking to people and they're at a party or at gatherings, and you want somebody like that on your board. And then as opposed to an introvert where they feel drained when they're doing that. Not that they can't do that, but they feel drained when they're doing that. So marketing and that sometimes goes together. Sometimes that's the same person, but not necessarily. Some people are comfortable with being social butterflies out, with their physical connections, but don't really necessarily understand how to transition that into a online forum. So those would be 2. And then the second 2 would be someone in programming. So if you're setting up some programs, youth programs, women empowerment programs, family programs, making sure that you have somebody in that programming area that already, maybe they worked for the Boys and Girls Club or they worked for the YMCA, they set up programs before. So you have an idea of how to set up the programs in your nonprofit. And then the final one would be, I'm missing one. What's the final core? We talked about marketing. We talked about having a social butterfly. We talked about programs, fundraising, of course. You definitely want somebody in fundraising. So someone who's already possibly had some familiarity with grants or with crowdfunding. Maybe they've already served on another nonprofit board. Those are the core components you want on your board to really get this ship running. Now, let's dig into the family aspect of it. So we know the people that we want on the board. What of all of those roles, if you see someone who really fits that role, what makes them someone that you think you should invite to the board? Well, their passion for the purpose. It's important that you all have kind of a similar passion and a similar drive to whatever the area of the community is you're serving. That's going to make it a win-win for them. because now they've already been passionate about that. They were already excited about that. And now they get to get involved, and they get to really just get involved with something that they're already passionate about. So now, they're just taking their passions and they're funneling that into some type of program. So you want somebody who's passionate about it. If this person happens to be a person that's in your family, would you say that would be a good idea to invite? It depends. You know them.
Yeah, I mean, you know them best, I guess. I mean, you know their traits, you know their personality type, you know pretty much everything about them. You know, sometimes, at least, you would think you know everything about them, but yeah.
Yeah, that would be one of the pros. So now we're going to dig into the pros. What I personally believe, I asked you about what you believe. What I personally believe is you never throw the baby away with the bathwater. That's what I believe. So I believe that we were just talking about this, and then we actually did our first little mini podcast this week. We were talking about social media and all of the access that platforms like this have to some personal information and things like that. And some people are like going off grid because they're very uncomfortable with it and things like that. And I had kind of used this point at that time, and I'll use it this time again. Every system out here, whether it's your family dynamic system, whether it's online dating system, which is how we met, whether it's social media and its system, it's all ran by people. So I don't believe in necessarily throwing away the system. I believe on working on people, because we are the ones that are running all of these different systems. Because we feed it, they exist. If you don't feed something, it won't exist. So how do you put yourself in a position where you're gaining the benefits of connecting on social media, which is we're talking to multiple people in multiple places at one time. So that's awesome. That's productivity. And kind of veer off some of the negatives. So I feel that same way when it comes to family. In some cases it can work, and in some cases it can't. Sometimes people have a bad experience with some family members and they're like, I'm never going to work with family again. That doesn't necessarily mean that you won't have a good experience with some other family members or something. Not to mention there's a lot of prominent businesses out here that are family based. The Kardashians, there's a whole lot of family businesses and or nonprofits that do well. So some do well, some don't. Let's first talk a little bit about the cons. What would you say is the first con that would come to your head when it comes to?
The same as a pro. You know their traits.
Yeah.
You know their personality. Are they on time? Are they not on time? You know, and as far as a con, wow, kind of stuck on that.
So we're all hungry over here, so our stomach is kind of. But I would say when it comes to the cons, the exact same thing. When it comes to the cons, you're absolutely right. Knowing them can be a good thing. Knowing them knowing you can be a negative thing. So, for an example, they still know you as Little Bobby. That's how that's what your family members call you. Or they might know me as Tracy from the things that, I did back when I was a kid or growing up or in high school or in different things like that. And sometimes they don't understand your journey and the things that you now know and, just respect you as a leader. Sometimes family members don't really respect you as a leader and respect you for the knowledge that you have obtained and for the path you've created. They still see you as that kid. You know what I mean? So knowing them, it can be a good thing because you know that, okay, they are someone who's coachable. That's a word that I heard from one of my clients this week, which I thought was huge, because if you know someone is coachable, that's a huge thing. That means that as long as your nonprofit hires on the right people to develop your team, there's there are people who will take on that coaching and would actually utilize it. So that's huge. So knowing them could be a good thing. Them knowing you could possibly be a bad thing. And so that definitely is a con. Another con I would definitely say to having family on board, just from a legal perspective and from a funding perspective. Good morning, Wayne Dawkins from John Rise. Good morning, guys. Yes, say good morning if you're watching so we see who's watching as well. And if you have a specific question that comes to your mind about having family on board, I know probably about what percentage of, would you say, because you work in that area in the name side, what percentage of our nonprofits would you say have?
75%.
Yeah, 75% of our nonprofits in our community, over 3,000 nonprofits have family on board. So in some type of aspect. Now, what I would personally say is you want to try to not have your entire board consistent of family. Have some people outside of your family that's on the board as well. That's a fresh perspective. And you also want to make sure you have a perspective of that's tied to your mission. So for instance, if you're in women empowerment, you want to have people who have some type of history, some type of a connection to the women empowerment area or youth programs or things like that. And so you do want to have fresh perspectives. Sometimes when you have all family on board, you don't have any fresh perspectives and you're not really serving at your full capacity. You're only serving from one perspective. So it's important to have an array of different types of people. So that would be, and that could sometimes have conflict of interest. Sometimes when it comes to funding, foundations look at boards that are all consistent of family, and they wonder if there's accountability. They wonder if the funding is going to be handled properly. They wonder if it's going to be too much conflict of interest with having a whole family on board. So that would be another one of the cons. We jotted some down for you guys as well. Some of the top cons that we also have here is communication. That again kind of ties to the whole concept of them knowing you and you knowing them. Sometimes even in just relationship, communication can be an issue. You know what I mean? So furthermore, you guys are trying to build something together. Let's say there's a negative. So for an example, let's give a little for some of our new followers and some of the people that came on from the video we did with Kareem and things like that. We work together 24/7.
24/7.
So we both serve on our nonprofit and in our LLC as well. And so that's the perspective that we're coming from here, is working with family. We are married and we also work together. And so definitely sometimes communicating things like maybe you're having a meeting about a certain fundraiser or a certain project that you're working on and you have opposing views. You want to be able to have those opposing views as partners in business. Nonprofit is a business. So as partners in business, have those opposing views and know that it's not going to affect anything else.
Actually be able to punch in and to punch out.
To punch in and punch
when
out.
You punch out, you got to go back to family life.
Exactly.
A lot of the work life has to be left behind and catch up on it tomorrow.
And sometimes we'll actually even do that. Like we'll be like, hey, okay, how was work today? Yeah. Like we're in a whole different realm, was anybody bitchy up in there or something like that? We'll just kind of like joke about it or whatever and switch off. So we definitely have a time we switch on, and then we have a time that we clock out.
You have to.
And especially in a quarantine. We
go to lunch and we try to, let everything that's happened during the day so far. We'll catch back with it after lunch.
And then we'll catch back. And then, having those times of break. So making sure you have that separation, which is why it's so important to have a good system and make sure that you're organized and you're planned. One of the videos is coming up, guys, or two videos. And I'll ask in the comments which one you guys want us to do first. One was we were going to describe in detail the tasks, the roles, and the responsibilities of each of those 8 things we just discussed, far as those 8 roles / board members. It doesn't necessarily have to be a full 8. So that was one video I want to do, and you guys can kind of vote below. The second is talking about the system. We utilize Trello, and so we wanted to do some more videos actually showing you all the system that we utilize in client management, in coaching, in our team management. So being all on the same page and making sure you have notes visually, make sure that you don't have to always talk about things and bring the work life kind of into the personal life. So how would that look like, oh, did you get that one client or did you get that one message? Well, if it's all in a place written down and organized and planned, you don't have to have those verbal conversations when you're not on work time, so to speak. So having that plan, and I think is important. I think as that system has started to kind of develop on our end, it's really helped us in separating work and family time. So having that separation of work and family time is an important portion, and definitely an area where I would say some negatives can kind of come into play a little bit. What other in cons would we say before we jump into the pros? Oh, this is another one that I think is definitely kind of huge, and that is favoritism. Like sometimes when you're working with family, some family may feel like they're entitled to serve on a certain role where it may not necessarily be a good fit for them. Now, how do you have that conversation when these are your kids or your spouse or your uncle, and you have a niece that wants to, serve in this role? And, you don't want to have, one thing about a nonprofit is the most transparent and the most accountable and the most mission-based type business that you can have. So you want to make sure that it's all about that. Mm-hmm. And it's not about, just someone because they gave. Even favoritism actually kind of isn't just when families are serving on the board. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it can just have to do with other types of relationship or financial donations, that someone's able to give larger financial donations, and then they can, now they can be able to do this or do that. When in all actuality, it should definitely be an equal. All the reason why you have bylaws is because they all apply to every member, no matter what. They apply to the president, treasurer, board member, advisor, all equally. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I love about nonprofits, is that you start with the equal playing field and that we're all doing this for the mission. Nobody's individual or ego-filled wheel, so to speak. So it's business. No, you're not good for that position, so to speak.
Now, we do get some people that ask if they can be voted off as, a president, and maybe it might be bad blood that they have with their family. It's different things that
we get that question a lot. We get that question a lot, so we definitely should touch on that a little bit. A lot of times people will say, like, but I'm nervous. I want to serve. Actually, we're talking to probably several people right now that want to just be the president, be the only individual on the board, and or not be able to get voted out. That is definitely legal in most states. You can have that wording there where you can't get voted out. However, with everything that we just kind of stated, when it comes to nonprofit, and it's about the mission, and it's about equality, and it's about taking something and creating a legacy for your family. That's going to get into the pros as we talk about that momentarily. With that being said, that doesn't really set up for equality. That doesn't set up for, and I know it's a lot of people who are not going to, maybe have opposing views on it, but that doesn't necessarily set up the playing field for you to be able to, good morning, Grand Rising, Maria, I think as well. Did I say that right? Marie Johnson, yes. But guys, like I was saying, that doesn't necessarily set up the playing field for an equal playing field either. When you have, okay, I can't get voted off. Or there's another wording that is legal. Now, you guys can do this. These decisions are your decisions to make. But I'm a firm believer in when you start with an equal, fair, accountable, transparent system, everybody is equally held accountable
towards the mission.
So what if that does take place? What if I'm the bad seed, and I happen to be the president, I happen to be the founder, and and I'm the one that's not gearing toward that mission? Guess what? I can say with all of the missions that we have for our nonprofits, I can say that I will want to be removed. Mm-hmm. I will want to be removed because the goal is the mission. The goal is the mission. The goal is the vision. The goal is the legacy. The goal is for our children to look back and say, mommy and daddy were able to help out with all of these women who were coming out of domestic violence relationship, to be able to be empowered, to be able to feel confident again, to be able to start their own business, to be able to start their own nonprofit, or for them to be able to say, hey, mommy and daddy were able to help these youth to be able to develop, who maybe didn't have a father in their life, and be able to create these roles. So it's all about the mission and the vision. It's not about the you. And that, to me, when it's set up as a nonprofit, it keeps it about the mission. Yep. Definitely. And so that's just my personal belief. There is definitely a way to be able to have yourself protected and not be able to get voted off. I guess thinking about this from a perspective of kind of playing the devil's advocate, I could also say I understand how people feel with that same concept. I'm passionate about the mission. I'm passionate about the people we serve. We serve the unlikely entrepreneur. We serve people who don't understand the business or the nonprofit spectrum, but they have passion for the community and they have something to give to the community. And I'm super passionate about that. So I would hate for everything that we built and all of the servicing that we've done, and then you look up and somehow you get voted off. I could definitely see how devastating that can be. And that's definitely happened about 1% of the time, I would say. That has happened. And so I can definitely relate to that fear. At the same point in time, the founder is typically the one that's kind of your board is almost a mirror or reflection of you.
Yeah.
You pick the board members.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? These are all people that you brought on in some type of way, and or your board members selected. But the original people that you wanted to work with are people that you deemed would be good fits for your organization. So that's when we talk about the seriousness of the process. How much time do you think people should put into?
I mean, you're putting into your business, so it has to be 99.999% of the time. You gotta know who you're gonna have on your board and
putting thought into it. Sometimes people just kind of like, I mean, and we have a lot of people who have said, I'm just kind of jotting names down for now. And you can change them. You can change them down the line. Changing board members is something that is probably the most, it's the most common change for a nonprofit. It's the most easiest thing to change. If you guys want me to talk more about changing board members, we can definitely talk about that. But even though you can change them, you still want to give good thought in recruiting good board members. And I would say the best boards, and if you guys made it to our interview that we did in our group a couple of weeks ago with Coburn Place CEO, we picked this up from them. The best boards are always looking and recruiting for additional skills and additional people bringing their skills that can help the nonprofit as well. So you should always be looking to recruit. You're always in that kind of recruiting energy. Oh, wow. And if this is your passion, you should be doing things and connected in communities that are also passionate about this thing. So you should be finding Facebook groups virtually now, or pre-COVID, finding actual physical things that you can get involved with, networking groups and things like that of people who are also connected or also passionate about the same thing you're passionate about. And in those group settings, you can meet other board members, because it's much easier to build together and to grow together than it is. Even our groups, we have several Facebook groups as well. We have a group specifically for nonprofit development and funding. So in there, people are building relationships. So many people are talking to each other, or especially people who are located in the same area or tied to some of the same missions. And you guys can join forces. We just had one of our nonprofit presidents post in one of the groups, being Blacks in Nonprofits, and she posted, hey, I'm looking for someone who has certain programs that are proven, and how we can tie them to my nonprofit, and here's the programs I have that are proven. We can tie them to your nonprofit. So now, instead of having single nonprofits, programs, we have two programs that are both proven, and we're growing our nonprofits together. I thought that was amazing. And so growing together is sometimes one of the kind of overlooked things, because people are so concerned about someone taking over or someone voting them off and things like that. But that's actually something that, in my personal opinion, that's something that's more of a distraction than it is an actuality. I haven't.
You're already setting yourself up for failure,
right?
In a sense.
Okay, here's a good perspective. Someone gave me the example of Steve Jobs, like they had voted him off at one point in time as well, which is a big example that a lot of people know of. But in all of the over 3,000, we've been saying that number for a minute, haven't did a recount. We're probably at 6,000 nonprofits that we have worked with. Have we heard one? Has there been one story of somebody getting voted off?
No.
Not one.
1%.
Not one.
Maybe in the 3.5 years we've been working together, maybe one.
I don't remember one.
Yeah.
Which one? No, we can't. Don't say there. But I haven't heard one story of someone actually getting voted off of their board, the founder. I can't think of one. You'll have to remind me of that afterwards. But even if it's one out of 3,000, out of 6,000 nonprofits, so that's something that's pretty much not very common. So a lot of times it can just kind of be a distraction of something to ponder about that's kind of causing you not to move forward in your nonprofit development and in going towards your calling. So what other pros? Let's end with some pros, guys. We've been on here for some time here. If you guys have any questions about the board or anything like that, feel free to go ahead and chime them in here as well. This is a good Q&A time. We're trying our best to start going live more times than we were before. It was once, now it's twice per week, and we're trying to add on to that so that we can make sure that we're answering your questions, guys, in our most productive way as well, because we're getting a lot more questions coming in. So this will answer a lot of questions about family on board and just board structure in general. So some of the pros, let's now look at the pros. We talked about the cons. So wrapping up the cons, I would say it's a challenge. Is it a challenge? Is it a challenge working with me?
No.
Yes,
honestly,
it is.
in the beginning it was, because I'm coming to a field that I had no prior knowledge of.
Okay.
So I'm learning from a whole new aspect. I got to learn from my wife, aka my boss, aka my manager, aka my partner. So, in that sense, I don't feel it was hard working with you. It's just the growing aspect. So
yeah. And then
am I hard working with you?
I say I would ditto everything that you just said. Everything that you just said, just kind of working with someone. Number one, that whole cutoff. You know what I mean? Like just kind of cutting off that energy, because sometimes in work, I would say my personality is totally different. Would you say that my personality is totally different when it comes to work and when it comes to off time?
Yeah.
It's almost a personality thing. It's almost a complete different personality or whatever. I'm very driven in work, but I'm really, really laid back in almost everything else. It's almost the only area that I'm driven. I'm direct. It's a different person to deal with. So I would say it has definitely been challenges. We've had our challenging days, and we have more good days than bad.
Yeah,
but I would say if it's to say that it's not challenging to work with family would be.
And your person, everybody's personality type, is going to go into effect with that. And you might not be a morning person where somebody else may be a morning person. You just run into so many different obstacles that you just got to keep pushing.
You got to keep pushing. Exactly. But the number one key, I would say, with not just working with nonprofit, with not just working with family and board, but just working with board members in general, just working with family in general, just relationships in general. I would say when you focus in on someone's strengths, gifts, talents, the things that come easy and natural for them, as opposed to trying to fit like a square peg into a round hole and, fit them into a role just because they're a body that's there, or just because, and sometimes that's the case when you're first starting. You're like, you know what? We have to fill all these 8 roles. How do we do that? And I'm one person, or I'm 2 people, or even 3 or 4. So we're wearing multiple hats. But I would say identifying the roles that actually come natural and easy for them, that is something that creates a win-win, because they're now doing what comes natural and easy for you is typically fun. So now they're enjoying the things that they're doing, and that makes the process a lot easier, as opposed to trying to force someone. So for an example, in a lot of nonprofits, one of the things that they do is they have you engage with the community. So they may have you physically go and have someone take a tour of a property, like with one of our nonprofits, or have someone, or go talk to or I would say go to an event. This was all they don't have a lot of events anymore, so I don't want to, I don't know when the events will come back. But they might have you go to an event and network with some people. Well, for me personally, that is like the most draining thing that I can do, is to be in a group networking and trying to have a discussion with 50 people physically at the same time. But in this atmosphere with the people that are watching right now, I'm very comfortable, and it's not as draining. So why would you force yourself into a lot of those atmospheres that's not something that you're really comfortable in, when as opposed to you going into a room and going into group atmosphere and things like that with people that you're comfortable with, you enjoy that. That's something that's more, so, you want to work with people's gifts. That's one of the things, same thing. Hello, Uncle, talking about family. This is one of our family and clients, Uncle and Auntie. They have the same Facebook page. I love when people do that. That's always so cute. But we have several clients that are family as well, guys. The truth of the matter is, this is something that we're passionate about. So if we're talking on a work aspect, or if we're just chilling and chatting, business sometimes comes up, because helping people to actually physically manifest their dreams and physically manifest the things that they feel called to do is something that I feel like the world really needs right now. If nonprofits were the backbone 5 years ago, right now in 2020, nonprofits are the backbone of change, of impact, of affecting those that really need the help the most. And so that comes out in our personal relationships. So if people around you aren't asking about, or aren't tied to your mission, or aren't tied to, hey, well, what are you doing over here? And you're not talking a lot about it, maybe you're not that passionate about it. But dealing with family and being tied to what you're passionate about is probably goes hand in hand.
Definitely.
Would you agree?
Yeah.
Our top challenge, our top question that we get in this area, I forgot to mention here, is how do you, when you have a challenge in a board member that happens to be family, how do we deal with that? How do you deal with challenges that come up? What tip can you give? I would say number one is definitely communication.
Yeah, that's key from the jump.
There is something that what is that show we used to watch sometimes? Married at First Sight. There is a marital coach from Married at First Sight, and he would say naked moments in relationship, which means you're talking from your heart, no judgment zone, just talking, and you know what I mean? And I think that you can have those same moments in business and things like that as well. I'm not trying to judge you. I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm trying for us all to grow. First, make sure you're around people like that are uplifting people, that are people who you know and you feel intuitionally, because people say a lot of things, but you feel intuitionally that this is a person that's for me, that's wanting group growth, not just individual growth, but growth in general. So make sure you're around people like that. And if you are, can we put on our big girl panties and our big boy panties and have a real conversation and say, yeah, I'm not trying to offend you. I'm not trying to hurt you, but this may not be your lane. Yeah. You might be in the wrong lane. Yep. Maybe you think it's your lane, but maybe it's not your lane. Sometimes you have to have those tough conversations. Yep. And when you are around people who can have those conversations, I would say that's the way that you deal with conflict, is making sure that the people on board are people that you can have tough conversations with for the betterment of the mission. So that sounds like a secret. I feel like a secret agent for the betterment of the mission. That's it, guys. Did we add all the cons here? I mean, the pros, you know them, you're building a legacy together. That's definitely a pro, that, you're building a legacy for your family. For when you see a family foundation, there's a lot of family foundations out here that we know of well here in Indy. What is it? Eli Lilly. That's a huge one. That's a family name. So you're building a legacy. You're building something that will outgrow you, and people will, the community will be impacted. I want to say people will know more so. The community will be impacted even long after you're gone. So that's the huge pro to working with family, if you can, and if it works out, and if
time spent together as well.
Exactly. Absolutely. Because we spend time doing so many toxic things together sometimes, eating toxic food or just binging out on Netflix, which is fine sometimes, but why not spend time together building something that you can leave to your children and your children's children. And you're teaching the family members that you're working with and your children how to have a passion and how to manifest that passion, how to create programs, how to work together, how to build something with accountability and transparency and things like that as well. So definitely. Any other questions, guys, before we let you go? Any other questions? I think we are good to go on this subject. It was so good talking to you all. Next week, I will send out a newsletter. If you guys are not on our newsletter list, all you have to do is go over to clarkandclark.org. It'll be listed below, and download our nonprofit checklist, and you'll be on our email blast. So you'll make sure you get all the updates and things like that from us. We do Q&A midweek on Wednesdays. And then on Saturdays, we always have someone special on giving either a nonprofit tip or talking about success that they had in the nonprofit arena. If you are just joining us, guys, from YouTube, please go on over to our Facebook page, which will be listed below as well, and look at some of those additional videos there, because we're new here on YouTube, so we only have a couple of videos so far, but we do plan on uploading a lot of the things that we did over on Facebook over here to YouTube as well, guys, and we will be here every week, so we'll slowly but surely build up these videos as well. If you have a specific question about nonprofit that you have not messaged me, or that we haven't answered in this one or in our nonprofit 3 things you need to know before starting a nonprofit, which is another video we have here, please feel free to go ahead and add them to the comment section as well, and we'll either answer them on here or we'll do a whole video about it as well. If you joined late live, guys, the 2 videos that we are considering doing mixed in with some of the nonprofit interviews are a planning video that kind of tells you a little bit about the system we use, which is Trello. It's free. It's a task management co-working system that helps you to get the things that are inside you out and in front of you, so you can then build from there. That's the system we use. So we were going to do a video on that. And we were also planning on doing a video as well, guys, on what was the second topic? Oh, detailing each role. Talking about what are the tasks, what does the activities look like for each role of your board. If you want a video on that, let us know that as well. And whichever one you guys want, we will go ahead and do that video next. But next week we will be joined. It's going to be interview, and we'll be joined by someone. We do have some questions, it looks like, over here. Go ahead.
On YouTube. On YouTube, or something.
This is one of our family members right now, guys. Like I said, it's all family in the. So this is my sister Gayla in the background, our production over here. I thought she was raising her hand, but she might have just been stretching. But that's okay. We are forgiven over here. So no, thank you guys. No problem. No problem. Thank you for adding to YouTube. No problem. And welcome again to our YouTube family. We are so excited to be a part now. We have been thinking about this and wanting to do it for some time. And fortunately, we were introduced to the platform we're using right now, guys, which is called StreamYard. And it allows you to be able to, and we were introduced to this from Kareem, and it allows us to be able to stream to YouTube and stream to Facebook at the same time. So we're growing both at the same time, and allows us to be a little bit more productive. I'm all about that productivity and those win-wins.
Definitely.
So guys, we will see you next week. These are normally about 30 minutes long. We will be here every week live at 11 a.m. every Saturday. So we will see you next Saturday live. And until then, guys, just make sure that you're being a part of the solution, that you're creating win-wins. And if you can get some family involved with it at the same time, do that as well, guys, because you'll be creating win-wins, being a part of the solution together. And what is better than that? Ain't that right, baby? All right. All right, guys, we'll see you in the next video, and feel free to reach out to us. We'll have all of our links below. If you have any questions, reach out to us as well, and we would love to be able to guide you in your nonprofit journey as well. See you in the next live.